Hello there. We're in Germany today, a place called Nuremberg, or Nuremberg as the Germans themselves would say, looking at some bridges. This is the drawing. I thought I'd start by showing you the conclusion. Fun little sketch from a little bar that does ice creams, having a fun sort of 45-minute session. Now Nuremberg's known as being a city, but it's only really 500,000 people, and the central part of it is actually quite pretty and quaint. It has these rivers running through it with these bridges, and it's very, very drawable. It has a real sort of sweet quality to it. It's in southern Germany, Bavaria, so that kind of the foresty bit, the bit that everybody knows has got that kind of that timbery thing going on that's very attractive and makes it a very appealing place for the urban sketcher, I think. And I specifically wanted to look at these bridges, so you'll see from this footage I'm kind of walking all over the place looking for the perfect place to get this view. And I found this cafe, and I found this view, and I thought, my word, that's the one for me. Now I often think there's two kinds of urban sketch position in terms of what we're going to draw. There's the one you choose because there's some kind of iconic view that you just can't not draw. And even if that means you have to stand up, although I don't want to stand up, and even if that means you have to sit on the floor, I don't particularly want to sit on the floor. But if the view is just such a view, then you'll do it because you forget the slight discomfort of all those things and just enjoy the drawing of the view. And then there's views like this, where there's a whole series of really quite beautiful little bridges, and they're all good. I could draw each one of them, and I'm walking around and finding the perfect position, which just happens to be associated with sitting and an ice cream, and that sense of being happy because you're relaxed. And at that moment, this is the perfect view because of that perfect position, that sense of feeling comfortable. And I'm a big fan of feeling comfortable when I'm drawing. I think that bleeds into the drawing itself. I think it makes the drawing a slightly happier drawing. And I think you can sort of see it in the way I'm drawing this. I'm just using a pigment liner here, not like a fountain pen, and it's got a kind of sort of a chisel head point. There's two kinds of pigment liners, and I should hasten to add what I mean by a pigment liner is something which is basically a waterproof pen. So if I'm going to put wateriness over the top, it's not going to bleed. So like a permanent pen, in other words. Now there's two kinds of nibs that I like. The brush nib is my favourite, but at a pinch, I'll take a chisel nib. And the reason for that is I like a nib that does something, so if you move the pen, it will make a different kind of mark. So it's not exactly as if there's unpredictability to it. It's that you can make a difference yourself in how you hold it and how you press and how you turn, in what kind of mark you make. So you feel as if you're more involved in the marking. If you use a typical 5-point pen, like a 0.1, a 0.2, a 0.3, a 0.4, all these kind of standard pens, they are designed specifically to create a standard line, a line that has that precise thickness to it. So they're great if you're doing a technical drawing, if you want the predictability of the lines always the same thickness, because with those kinds of pens, they are designed to not vary, to be reliably the same. And being reliably the same doesn't really interest me when I'm doing a sketch. I want variation, because in the variation is the essence of the sketch. I think that's what sketching means. If I want to do a technical drawing of this bridge, I might use a fiber point with a 0.5, whatever. But if I'm doing a sketch, I want to be able to respond differently. Now you'll see I've chosen a piece of craft paper, it's called, which is like wrapping paper, like the kind of paper you might use to wrap a parcel to send off somewhere. It has thin, dark brown lines in it. So it's kind of made in a different way, craft paper. And it is very interesting to draw on because of this sense of its immediate sort of, I want to say cheapness, but I don't mean that in a bad way. It's not like you're using some proper piece of paper. You're using something that feels like it's on the back of an envelope. Not really, but that sort of let's do it right now, right here kind of feel to it. There's a youngness to it that I really enjoy. It's a proper paper. It's not actually wrapping paper in the true sense. It's made by Clairefontaine, who are the kind of supplier who do most of my papers, but it's thinner than usual. It's only 90 grams per square meter. It's more than half the thinness if that's the way of saying it, than the paper I'd normally like. And in fact, to be honest with you, the thicker the paper, the happier I am. I love 300 GSM. I'll accept 250 GSM, but anything below that, it starts to get thin, and the thinner the paper, it starts to react to watercolour, to water, to wetness. It starts to buckle, basically. And I am often asked, but why not use watercolour paper? That's what most people would suggest when you're doing anything which might involve watercolour or wetness or ink, because it's a thicker paper that stops any kind of warpage. And for me, it's a simple answer but watercolour paper feels precious, and it's expensive, and it just feels a bit kind of, oh, look at me, I'm doing a drawing. It just puts a different feeling in my head, and I like the simple tonal cards and papers you get, which make me feel more relaxed, because it doesn't feel as if I'm doing something proper, I suppose, in a strange way. It's a mental thing, it's in my head that a piece of paper that isn't watercolour just feels more friendly and less pressured, less precious. Where was I? So I'm using this craft paper, and I'm going through a very simple technique. I've used the Posca pen, the 8mm, to be the underdrawing, to kind of lay everything down. I mean, I could use a pencil, and in other of my videos in my Germany trip, I've been using a pencil to do the same thing, but it's nice to mix it up. But all I'm really doing is allowing myself to very quickly draw, as it were, the outlines of where these big forms are, in a way that I feel that if I get it wrong, I could correct it, because it's a very pale beige coloured ink on a very pale beige coloured paper. So in my head, that's relaxing, because if I'm wrong, I can correct. However, I'm not wrong. In the same way as you wouldn't be wrong with a pencil, really, because it doesn't matter what wrong is. All you're really doing is laying down a line that says, this is where this tower is, this is where the arch is. Because you feel as if you can correct, I find that 9 times out of 10, you don't feel as if you made a mistake. You can work with it. Now, the reason I include the photograph I took from the day to the side is so that you can see how it's not really accurate to the photograph, but it's accurate to the bridge. There's a difference. That's what a sketch is. A sketch is accurate to the feeling, accurate to what you're seeing, but it's not like a tracing, because if you want to do a tracing, then do a tracing, for heaven's sake, that's fine. But if you're there drawing it, obviously you can't be accurate to that level of precision, and nor should you want to be, and nor is it relevant, because you're a human being, and therefore you're bringing your own sort of emotional experience to the drawing and making your own decisions about where these lines are going to be and what sort of technique you're going to use, what colours you're going to use. So it's a different kind of process when you urban sketch. So using the craft paper, using the Posca to do a baseline, then I'm going in with a pigment liner with a chisel head in order to get the main line of the drawings down. I'm going in with a white acrylic pen to kind of pop up the highlights. Then I'm using this, which is a Tom Studio, a Lumos pen, which is it's like a fibre point. It has a brush nib on it, but you can fill it with fountain pen ink. It's really a clever little simple tool, because it allows you to use whatever ink you want in terms of colours, and also blends. So I often will buy 2 or 3 fountain pen inks and mix them myself to form a kind of slightly different colour. It's not that the colour is therefore particular colour I'm looking for. It's the reverse. I'm looking to sort of not have a predictable colour. I'm looking to kind of mix things in a way that I'm not necessarily sure what the end product will be, because I want the uncertainty principle. I want to be kind of excited and engaged by the colour that comes out of that pen. So the Lumos Duo I'm using here actually has 2 ends to it. One end I have a brush pen, the other end I have a chisel head pen, or chisel head nib, and they both have subtly different colours in. One's more brown and one's more red. And as you can see actually on that lower part of that bridge, you can see the sort of magenta-y colour and the thinner browner colour. And that kind of duality, that one pen doing 2 things, is really relaxing. I know I often go on about how important it is to be relaxed, because if you think about it, this could feel like a challenge, he says, in inverted commas, that sense of it being a challenge and therefore not necessarily enjoyable, because it feels like a test. And who wants to, go on holiday and be tested as far as their ability to draw is concerned, and that sounds awful. So this is never ever to feel like a test or even a challenge. It's there to feel like an enjoyable drawing, that's all. Nothing pressured, just a way of remembering this beautiful view with a pleasing moment, where you're just sitting and enjoying the view in a way that feels creative rather than enjoying the view in a way that feels passive. So most people, when they're on, as it were, holiday, it's a passive engagement because they're just looking at things and experiencing them. It's still great, of course, but it's not the same as doing a drawing, because a drawing is creative, and therefore that connection is somehow more establishing, or at least in my mind. When I'm doing it, the sketch is an act of creativity, that is an act of connection. Now, we're using quite a few acrylic pens. We've gone through the Just Arts, we've gone through the Artist Pro, we're going through the Artex now, and what I like is that variation. I could theoretically use one brand for all of these acrylic brush pen marks. I use various brands because I enjoy having various pens in my pencil case. Does that make sense? I'm not looking for the predictability of it all being the same brand and it therefore behaving in the same way. I don't particularly want my pens to behave in the same way. I'd quite like it if every single pen in my bag would be a different brand with a slightly different characteristic. And I'm not trying to be clever in saying I know what the characteristics are and therefore I'm reaching for the pen with a certain characteristic. Nothing as clever as that. It's just that I want it to feel alive in my hand in an unpredictable way, in a way that when I'm using it, I'm kind of thinking, oh look, it's doing this, and therefore I'm going to change myself like that. You'll see me using a pen with different hand grips in order to get the contact between the nib and the paper to vary. You'll see me using things like the angled shader brush here for doing the sky, and it's angled and flat, therefore when you turn it you can get different widths and different effects. It can be a kind of brush if you just push down with it, but it can also have a sort of a linear or a block quality that you can control. I mean, as I'm doing the water here, water is one of those classically tricky things to do. Look how easily the brush itself is making those marks. All I'm doing is kind of drawing a line with a bit of pressure in the middle to give that kind of wavy variation to the reflections in the water surface, and with very little effort it's kind of doing it itself. And that's one of the fun things about tools which have variation, is there comes a moment where that's what you want, where the very variation itself is like real life. When you're drawing a line that is a piece of stone, that line of stone is variant. It's blurry, it's not a fine line, is my point. Nothing in the world is really a fine line, unless I guess you're drawing sort of modern buildings, glass and steel, that maybe they're fine lines. But everything that's stone, everything that's wood, everything that's water, everything that's sky has that variation inherent within it because it's part of the natural world and it isn't made of straight lines. So if you can bring variation into the mark you make, albeit sometimes very subtle, then that makes it feel more connected, at least in my eyes. You'll see me here doing some finishing up the sky. I'm using an ink, and I felt as if the patch of dark sky I put in was maybe a bit too punchy, so I've softened it slightly with some water, and I'm doing the same with the water here. It's got an interesting little technique where you're just putting a light wash over the whole surface in order to kind of connect it all together, sort of step back some of the colours, step back some of the whites, not all of them, but some of them, just so the whole thing kind of sort of sits back and sort of plays nicely together. And because I can't stop myself sometimes punching up the shadows with that blue because it's in my brush and I'm enjoying the colour. Now we're coming to the end, and I can't leave you without telling you a fascinating bit of history about this bridge. Henkersbrucke, Henkersbridge is hangman's bridge, as in the person who hangs people by the neck, executioner. And the tower at the end is the executioner's tower, the hangman's tower. I mean, wow. it really pays to do your translations and understand the depth of history throughout places like this that look so decorative and pretty and and they have a history. So, the drawing is done. Splendid view, splendid day. Thank you to the Cafe Trudelmarkt, who kindly provided the ice cream and the seat. And I hope you enjoyed this drawing. I did. I like the colour. It seems like a happy drawing to me. And I don't intend to ever draw an unhappy drawing, because what's the point in that? Life's too short as it is, isn't it? So thank you very much. If you've been listening to the end, you're a star. I really, really appreciate it. And I shall see you next time. Why not go out there and draw a bridge?
University of Technology, Nuremberg, Music, Nuremberg. Nuremberg